Okay, UFC Fight Night 219 takes place this weekend at the UFC Apex, and I'm going to be breaking down every fight on the card as always. This video will cover the prelims only, quickly followed by the main event card. And before I get into this, Jesus Christ, what a potential stinker we have on our hands here. And it really could have been even worse. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. There are a few fights on the card that were not announced yet, so I may be missing one or two by the time the final card falls into place. Now, there are a few interesting matchups on this card, but so many banana skins here. This one is a minefield. Frankly, I considered skipping it, but I'm a risk taker, so let's go. First fight is between two pretty inexperienced contenders, Carpenter and Randeros. I'm going to pick Carpenter in this one, really risky one. Randeros lost his last fight in his UFC debut, standing in as a late replacement, but he was against David Dvorak, which is a hell of a tough one to get in a debut. So I'm not going to rain down on him too hard for that one. He did also have a really close split on the regionals before that. And frankly, I think he's only getting another shot for stepping up and doing the UFC a last minute favor. I'm pretty sure that fight with Dvorak, he stepped in as a last minute replacement. He has a pretty big reach disadvantage. He has less significant strikes at a much lower clip. And he apparently has very little wrestling threat. So for that reason, with more potential ways to win, I'm going to go with Carpenter. He has a range of different wins and some decent amateur experience. I think this will be reasonably close. Possibly will go the distance. I think 29-28 Carpenter. Not much else to say on that one. This really should be taking place on the regionals, but man, whatever. If you're betting, probably fade this one. It's risky, but if you fancy a flutter, yeah, maybe go with Carpenter. Fight 2, AJ Fletcher versus Gorimbo. Sheesh. Let's try and keep the energy up. I'm going to take AJ Fletcher. He is coming off 2 unanimous decision losses in his 2 recent scraps against Lusa and Semmelsberger, which maybe haven't aged too well. They are the only 2 losses of his career though, and he's young and can bang pretty well. I think his major advantage will be in the wrestling department here, despite the fact that he's listed as a striker. Themba is coming off the regionals. He last fought at Fury and has shown he can go 3 rounds. His record though is deceptively a lot worse than it looks after he lost all 4 of his amateur fights. Not really a great sign for me. Again, this is a risky pick because Gorimbo is relatively unknown. We don't know really what his ceiling is. I mean, he's not the youngest at 32, but he hasn't really had a big chance yet. It's a risky pick. I think AJ's younger. He's faced off against better competition in his career, and I think this is really going to matter. I don't know why this guy Gorimbo is getting a shot, and he may surprise me, but I'm taking AJ in this one. I think a distance play is probably the one I'd go for as a gambler, so maybe to go the distance. But yeah, if you feel like taking a little risk, AJ Fletcher might not be a bad shout. Oh, okay. Next one is Elder versus Sadykov. Forgive my lack of major enthusiasm here. This really is a horrendous card. Okay, so this should be a fight between 2 strikers. Nazim, for me, is far more active in his striking, and I think that might be the difference. Both men have not faced amazing competition. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but I feel like this should be another fight that should be on the regionals, not in the biggest MMA promotion on this side of the globe. Sadykov is way more accurate though, and he strikes a lot more, so I think he'll win by UD. I think he'll pepper strikes, and I think he'll wear Elder down, who will have his moments, I think. Sadykov also has more TKOs on his record. Not sure how much we can depend on that, as we know how MMA math can be. totally unreliable. I just think in a fight that appears this even, you have to take the guy that's more active. I think it's decent matchmaking considering how they match up on paper. I just think Sadykov will grind this one out by, again, peppering the face, accumulating more damage. Even though the scoring rules sometimes don't mean shit, which really is an embarrassing thing to say. Yeah, I have to kind of go on that basis. So I think Sadykov will win by unanimous decision. I think Elder's relatively tough. Okay, this is a slight improvement, and I do mean slight. OVP is a somewhat journeyman legend in the game, but this is not the same guy that took John Jones into a competitive fight. It's just not. He's been flatline KO'd in 2 of his last 3. He lost to Tanner Bosa, who's actually a common opponent with Linz, and that guy can really crack. He also lost to current champ Hill, got absolutely dismantled in that one, which there's no shame in. Hill is extremely explosive. We've seen what he can do. I mean, we saw what he just did to Glover over 5 rounds, so, you know. He also beat Alonzo Manyfield, who looked fantastic in his draw against Crute over the weekend. So that one is pretty much aged like fine wine. Linz beat Marcin Prachnio, who's actually popping up in the main card of this fight night, in a pretty competitive fight. But he also got brutally KO'd by Bosa and also holds a loss to Arlovsky. Not great. Fucking horrendous, really, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if either man won this fight. It's another banana skin. Both should pretty much be on their way out. I just think OVP is kind of further along in that. I'd say OVP has kind of more ways to win. But I think based on the fact that OVP's been beaten up way too many times, I don't know. At the same time, I never feel like it's too smart to bet against him. You know, I've been watching the sport for a while now, and OVP is a known parlay destroyer. I don't feel good about this one, but I'm going to take Linz. This would be one fight where if they both smacked each other and fell over and it was a rare double KO, I wouldn't be shocked. I'll take Linz just because he's been in far less wars and he's further away from the end of his career. But I can see this one being sloppy, slow-paced, and a potential long shot on going the distance. So look out on that one. Okay, this one's a baffling one as well. We've got Jamal Emmers versus Hussein Askhabov. Right. Emmers is coming off a loss against Sabatini, who is, looked very good for a while, despite losing to Damian Jackson, who just got absolutely whooped by Dan Ige. And he also got a split decision loss against Giga Chikadze, which actually has aged really, really well. Giga Chikadze went on a nice little run. And now if you look at the records of these two men, this looks like a complete no-brainer. But I can faintly smell, I'm getting a whiff of tomatoes here, and the sound of cans being crushed against the wall in regards to Askhabov. Emmers is a very dangerous guy, and this fight is pretty even in the odds. I think this really has to do with the level of competition both of them have faced. Emmers got pretty easily submitted in his last one by Sabatini, and Askhabov has a really extensive record of subs, 1 or 2 KOs thrown in there, albeit against way worse competition. I mean, Emmers beat Corey Sandhagen once upon a time. He's been in there with Moises and Arosa. He lost both those, but those, it's hardly shameful. They're both really good contenders. I'm going to take Askhabov to get a submission here. I think the fact that this is at the apex and there'll be far less pressure on him in his UFC debut in front of less spectators should really matter in this one. Emmers is a big dog though in this one, and he might be good on a long play. I'm going to go with Askhabov though. I think it's a tough debut against a very experienced man. but his management must have a lot of faith in him to be taking this one. And, you know, at this stage of his career, 28, first appearance in the UFC, I think a risk needs to be taken. You know, he needs to try and do what he can to climb up really quick. Yeah, Askhabov. Don't feel great about it, just like I do with the rest of them. But yeah, I'm going to go Askhabov. Okay, this one is the easiest fight to pick on the card by far, by a country mile. I think Silva beats Lansberg up. This is a layup. Lansberg, to her credit, is pretty durable, but she's old and she's coming off 3 tough losses. I mean, I'm 2 years younger than her and I have to wake up most nights to take a piss, so I can imagine how she must feel. Bueno Silva is young, she's pretty strong, and I think she's going to get a submission here despite not really having a wrestling game. She does have 2 losses in her career. One was to Manon Fiorot, who is probably the hottest prospect in the division and is likely to get a shot next. She also lost to Moroz, who is pretty decent herself in a very close decision. Lansberg is just on her way out, and I expect her to retire after this one. You know, for the sake of the division, a very, very poor division, Silva needs to win this for whatever that's worth. The division is shite anyway, so actually scratch that, never mind, who cares. I think Silva pieces her up, and this will force Lansberg to bring the fight to the ground. So I don't think Silva's going to take her down. I think the ground play is going to be forced by Lansberg, who's getting peppered in the face. And I think as a result, while they're on the ground, I think she's going to get a limb snatched and she's going to get submitted. Now, this is listed as the co-main event of the prelims, but I've looked at the fight docket and there's only 4 fights on the main card. So I assume the Miller fight, which is due to happen next, is going to get bumped up. But look out in the description for any changes to that, because there are 1 or 2 fights that I think might get added at the last minute. Right, this table will probably show you how mercilessly problematic this card is in terms of value. I would leave my wallet closed on this one if I were you, and if I was a smart man, which I'm evidently not, I wouldn't even be making picks at all on the prelims. I should have just let it go. But like I said, he who dares wins, so I'm gonna have a crack anyway. I do think there is more value on the main cards, and I'm really sticking my neck out here. So just to do a quick run through, Carpenter money line, I think that one might go the distance. I've got Fletcher and Gorimbo going the distance. I don't really feel confident in either of them, but I'm slightly favoring Fletcher in that one. Sadykov on the money line, you can get for decent money. I think with, again, risky play, very even fight in that one. Silva by finish, I think, is a reasonably safe play. I think she's going to beat Lansberg up. Askhabov on the money line, I think with his record and, you know, the momentum that he's coming in, despite the fact that I like Emmers, it feels the safer one. Again, not totally confident. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes a long shot, and wants to boost the odds a little bit, AJ Fletcher by TKO could boost the odds. He's a very slight favorite. So if you pick him by TKO and the man can bang, you might get a nice boost in odds there. OSP versus Lins to go the distance. Conventional wisdom would suggest that the two of them are going to just stand and bang and someone's going to get knocked out. But I have a sneaky feeling that a distance play might be the one to go with. And yeah, you could get very decent odds on that. Jamal Emmers finish. Guy's got a lot of experience. Like I said, Askhabov has not faced the best guys in the world despite holding a very impressive record. Wouldn't surprise me if Jamal Emmers caught him right on the chin and just put him for a nice little nap. So that might be one to look for. And due to the disparity in odds, the Lansberg Silva one to go the distance might be a decent long shot. Lansberg, despite losing her last 3, has gone the distance in all of them. And, you know, women's MMA, they can get a little bit scrappy. So there's every chance that she might be able to stick it out. And seeing as this probably will be her last fight, you never know. Okay, so yep, I am gonna follow this up tomorrow with the main card picks, which, like I said, there's more value there, but it's being headlined by Blanchfield and Andrade, so that should tell you. It might be the best way to boost enjoyment in the card, to be honest, just sticking some money on it. I often do that when I think a card's going to be terrible. See you in a bit.